Welcome to From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicated to discussing the challenges and providing tips for women in tech leadership. Hi, I'm your host, Limor Bergman-Gross, and in each episode, we'll hear from other successful women in tech, sharing their stories, insights, and advice. Join us as we empower each other to reach our full potential in the tech industry. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And today, super excited to talk about a topic that I think is going to be super relevant for pretty much everyone. We are going to talk with Dana Shamas about leading with intuition. Empowering women in tech industry, obviously, that's what we are here for. Before we start, I wanted to introduce Dana. That I would say, Dana, you have a very interesting background. That's at least my opinion. So Dana used to work in the financial industry in Wall Street as a financial analyst, and then was a business consultant, helping multiple startup founders in health and wellness space raise funding, launch projects, and double sales. Then Dana founded her own private yoga studio, which successfully maintained a 50 to 90% client retention rate over 8 years. And now she's an executive health and wellness coach. And welcome, Dana. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Me as well. Excited to talk to you today. And your background is very, very interesting and very diverse. And I would like to start with maybe you can share your background and what kind of sparked your interest in intuitive leadership and coaching.
So it was really quite an evolution. I have a strong background in business and a very analytical mind. And so when I had my studio and I was doing lots of private yoga classes and teaching breath work and meditation, I found that most of my clients were professionals, were executives, were CEOs, were lawyers, doctors. And so what I found is that, yes, we did yoga. Yes, we did meditation and wellness coaching. But really, I did a lot more coaching while I did all of those things, right? And so eventually I decided, okay, coaching is really what I'm good at. And the people that are really attracted to me and really resonate with me are people who are in leadership positions and really need this kind of perspective, both the tools to keep them in a healthy balance and keep them connected, and also that perspective of how we open up and broaden our bandwidth and our intuition and connect to what is true and real for us, so that then we can go back out and lead in a way that is effective and innovative.
Absolutely. And what is intuition even? What does it mean to you?
It means listening to your inner voice. So all of us have intuition, all of us, right? It's just that some of us either naturally follow it more often, are trained, or have the opportunity to follow it more often. But most of us really get trained out of using our intuition. And for me, I had this really big epiphany probably 5 or 10 years ago, that growing up, everybody was like, oh, you're so smart. You're just so smart. How'd you know that? You just are really smart and can remember things and what have you. And I realized as I started to understand energy and intuition better, that really I was very intuitive, that I could pull information out of the field, out of the energy field and what was going on. Yes, also very smart and all of those things, but really this ability that there's so much information that we receive in ways that are unseen, that we perceive them in ways that aren't reading or audio hearing, right? that we have all these other senses as humans and all these other abilities as humans that um, for most of us, like we tend to think they're really annoying because we get overwhelmed. That like there's if you're a sensitive person or you take in things that way, you receive in so much information all the time that if you don't really tune and work with those muscles in different ways, then you don't know how to use them and they're stressful
Yeah.
versus working with them and figuring out, oh, that's information coming in, right? And how do I use that? So really listening to your inner voice and tapping in to your ability to receive an information in a variety of ways.
And why is it so important that we listen to our inner voices?
Yeah, because your inner voice knows the best and highest path for you, right? Like you are a very unique human, right? Like there's no one else that your body is different from other people's bodies. The way you take in information, your skills, your gifts are yours. There's really no one else that can tell you how to use them as much as you can tell yourself how to use them because they're yours. And so learning and understanding how it works and what it is really important if you really want to walk in the world in a way that truly utilizes what you are designed to do and give to the world and be in the
Abs-
world.
Absolutely. And I very much relate to that. It took many years to realize what I'm destined to do. You
Oh.
know, after over 20 years in tech, I realized that my gift is really to help others and lift others, which is, kind of similar to you in a way.
Yeah, very similar. Very similar. I mean, I'll share that going to business school and being in investment banking, like there's a lot of programming of what a successful person looks like and like this ideal of being an entrepreneur and starting a business and selling it. And it took me a long time to be like, oh, that's actually not what I am supposed to do in that way. And really success for me is something that was different. So yeah, the sooner you can be on that journey and the sooner you can understand that, the more happiness I feel that you would find.
Absolutely. Not just happiness, I think it also more success. Because when you tune to your inner voice and you define your own success, what success look like, what leadership look like, you just thrive.
Yes. And this particular time, I just feel it's so important. We have so many systems changing, so many structures changing, that following your intuition and what you're meant to do really means creating this new environment and this new world that we're walking into that we all want, right? That allows more people to thrive and really succeed and live in their truth. So the impact level that you have when you follow that intuition is so much more than most of us can dream of.
Yeah, and for women in tech, right? We're talking here about women in tech. I've been there. I faced a lot of challenges, a lot of biases, and had to kind of have to forge my way up. How do you see intuition playing a role in women in leadership positions in tech?
I just think it's vital, right? Because as you said, in tech, there is a lot of bias. There is kind of a lot of pigeonholing. And so you knowing what your gifts are and you following that, as well as you following your intuition, means that you can solve these problems that need to be solved, right? That other people aren't. And being able to step in and create things in ways that need to be created. If you don't listen to your intuition and you just follow what other people tell you to, or you just follow the way it's been done in the past, you know, what you're here to do and what you're meant to do, you're just not going to be able to do it because you're here to do something different, right? You're here to lead in a different way. You're here to create new things in a different way. And if you are a woman in tech, you have a perspective that I can tell you most of the other people at the table don't have, and it's very needed in the world. So I and it gives you that inner resiliency because at the end of the day, it's really hard to walk into the room and have a unique voice every single day. Like that can be exhausting. And so having that resiliency and having that connection to come back to that energy and that power that is true to you and that you have access to, right, allows you to pull in the resources that you need to support you as you thrive and to recognize them in the world, right? So not only does intuition and like connecting to your inner voice and your energy help you be more resilient, but it also helps you navigate the world in front of you, right? To see who those allies are, to see the opportunities that are really going to let you thrive. And that can be as important as anything else.
Absolutely. And what you mentioned, I can relate so much. And so many women I hear, not believing in themselves, also trying to mimic others, as you mentioned, right? To do what their male counterpart are doing, what their managers, sometimes the managers try to tell them, oh, you should do that. You should be more, I don't know, whatever that may be. And it's not really being true to themselves.
It isn't. And that kind of behavior just serves the system in place, right? That when you come in and you lead differently and you have different ideas, that means people have to change, do things differently. And if you're not, you know, in a place where there's just way more opportunity to do that than there ever has been before, in my opinion, and where there are so many more areas and industries and places that understand that they need change and are more willing to listen than they have been in the past and more willing to make that change because it's so necessary. So, we're at a place where speaking, maybe in the past, maybe 10 years ago, it would have been harder for you to speak up and have the same kind of impact that today, like change is happening quicker, probably not as
Mm-hmm.
quick as we want, but certainly being able to see the opportunities and see your allies and see the situations where like, oh, okay, I can walk in and have an impact in a way that I want and that is needed.
Absolutely. And I think one of the challenges is that to be different, to have a different perspective, to share different opinions requires a lot of confidence.
It does. Yeah. Requires also requires a great deal of self-love. Like this is the part like you have to love yourself, your gifts, your like truth so firmly that you can cultivate the courage to say those things, to say what needs to be said uh with heart in a way that's received, right? Like sometimes, this is a lesson that I had to learn. Like we can say things that are true and we say them, but if we don't say them in a way that can be received, it is not received, right? If we
Yeah.
say it with anger, if we say it with malice, if we say it with other kind of emotions that are wrapped up in it, then what's coming through as truth doesn't land as truth or isn't received in the same way that is actionable. So you being clear and you coming from your heart from a place of authenticity and ease and just like, yes, this is just the way it is, is quite different and often gets received in a very different kind of way.
Yeah. It sounds easy, but it's not so easy. I know that personally, for personal experience. And what would you say to a woman? I mean, I had multiple, multiple clients like that, that she is in a leadership position. She's, she obviously have a different perspective. Her manager may ask her to behave a certain way based on her manager's kind of a point of view of how they see leadership. And it's not true to her values and how she believes. But she feels very inconfident and she's just afraid, of being different. How can she start to change that?
So I would say start in the little ways, right? So what are the things that feel true, right? What are the ways that feel true? And how can you bring that to the table on a regular basis? And most of the time, yeah, okay. And so then the other question, so that would be like a basic kind of in the situation that you're in now, looking for the places that you can get a win-win, right? Where you
Yeah.
feel like, okay, there's enough space for me to lead here in the way that I really want to lead, right? But in this space over here, okay, I can see like there's not as much receptivity, right? And so my bandwidth for actually stepping into my authenticity is not as well received. So what are the opportunities that I can bring forward to switch and change them? Like what are the opportunities within that framework that I can speak up in a way that creates even a nuanced amount of change, and those situations is a huge win, right? So like when we're in an environment where things aren't the way we want them and they're very stuck, right? Like we're in this old model of leadership, and that's not the way we're going to move forward because everybody is unhappy with it, or at least a large part of people, like it's not working for. And leadership has always done it this way, and so they're like, this is the way we do it, this is the way I've done it, so we're just going to keep going. But you can see, you're like, well, you're not really looking around that there's a whole lot of people that it doesn't work for. And so in those situations, right, like if you want to stay, then, there are opportunities, and you have to be open and receptive and like be like, oh, there it is. That's opportunity. I can say this at that moment, and that changes this mindset, you know, 3 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But in those environments, over time, that begins to change, right? And we are in an environment where if you see all of that happening in your dynamic, chances are there's going to be a big opportunity for you to step forward. It just may not come in the way that it has in the past, right? And so a lot of it is you staying true to yourself and you fortifying yourself, because in those environments it is challenging and you do have to do a lot of self-care to maintain that presence. But my guess is if you're there are people who really need leadership style, and there are people who really need to hear your voice, right?
Yeah.
And so if you feel like that is the right place for you, then it is about taking care of yourself, and it is about using those opportunities to step into that place of authentic leadership. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And yes, a lot of times we are impatient. We want to change the world, and we have to understand that changes sometimes needs their time. Sometimes it's a marathon, depending obviously on the situation. And we have to be patient. And every small step can make a big difference, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And um those are always situations that I tell my clients. I'm like, okay, so you have to go in, and is this environment aligned for you? Like, do you feel that you are like, this is what you want to do and this is what you're meant to do? And if the answer is yes, then you have to have strategies for how you step into that alignment in those environments. And you have to know that you're going to have, like, your self-care practices need to be X.
Yeah.
You have to really take the time and set the boundaries to care for yourself and value yourself.
Absolutely. And value yourself. This is a very, very strong word. And so many people don't value themselves enough, right?
Yes.
So how can women, value themselves more? It's $1 million question, no, but how can we help? How can we help women to value themselves?
I mean, for you and me, a lot is modeling, right? How do you
Yeah.
value yourself? And for me, most of the clients that I work with, there is, I don't work with very many people who outwardly don't love themselves. But what I find is it's the sneaky ways that we don't love ourselves, right? It's the saying yes when we really need to say no. It's the little tiny voice that's like, maybe that's not good enough. Maybe you should do a little bit more, right? It's the letting your energy get pulled in a different direction. Those sneaky ways that add up when you get to the end of the week and you're like, what did I do? And it's not, like, isn't that there are huge things. It's all those little choices that add up. And so, how do we be more diligent and be like, my heart really wants to do this, right? Like, okay, that might sound really fun, but my system really needs to just rest today. Or I really just need to go for a walk instead of doing one more meeting. I need,
Mhm.
like, it's the small choices.
Yeah, making small choices and practice, right?
Diligence. Yes, it is in the practice. It is in, there, one of my very first yoga teachers had this anonymous quote that said, in the practice, the magic will rise.
Wow, I love that.
Yes. And it's so true. Like, it is in the doing of those things, and it is in the diligence of consistently doing those things that shift, that sustainable change happens
Yeah,
in a
and
way that your nervous system feels good.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of time my clients they look for magic, solution. I tell them, well, you need to constantly practice, right? I mean, there is no magic here. Just start cultivating change. And every time take a small step that makes you maybe a little bit uncomfortable, right? I mean, but practice all the time.
Yeah. For sure. Practice all the time. And then when you do recognize that things have changed, really celebrate it. When
Mm-hmm.
you do have that opportunity where your voice is heard and action is taken, celebrate it, recognize it, and celebrate it. You know, in I just find that women so often we just move to the next thing. Like, okay, done. Yeah, of course that should have happened. Let's just move on to the next thing that has to get done, versus like, ooh, no, that's change. That's different. Wow, I've asked it for it to be different and now it is. Okay.
Absolutely. We don't do that enough. We are focused on the next thing or criticizing ourselves of not doing enough and not achieving the next thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that celebration amplifies that kind of positive energy change, right? Like if your system, energy wise, you're just like, oh, I got to do more. Oh, I got to do more. Then, like, there's not a lot of motivation for your energy and your inner self to actually create change because then, like, you teach your system that there's just more.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talked earlier about, being angry or, differently, there are little emotional triggers that can often hinder growth and success, right? When you're trying to cultivate change and maybe you're frustrated or you're angry. How can women kind of recognize those emotional triggers and navigate them effectively?
Yeah. So emotional triggers are always information. And so I think as women, and especially in the tech and business world, like emotions are looked at as a weakness, perhaps, or you don't have mastery over yourself. And what I've come to learn is that emotions are really information. They are telling you something. Something has happened in your environment that is not okay with your system. And so, that's a great thing that your system is telling you something has happened that you really need to take stock of, right? And so that's the first thing, is coming into relationship with these emotions, right? Not being anger, not trying to shove them down or deny them or stop them, but be like, oh, this makes me so angry, or I'm so frustrated. And like, okay, great. So why? What does that mean for you? Where is that? What needs to change? What boundary was violated? What brick wall are you hitting? And so then the next question of inquiry, right, is this something in you? Is this a limiting belief in you? Is this a story within you that needs to shift or change? And then after you figure that out, which is a big one, then what action do you need to take? What aligned action do you need to take to change your course of direction, to either resolve this situation or handle the situation in a new and different way, so that you don't feel the same level of emotion, of anger or frustration? Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Total
Yeah.
sense. I'll just say that finding those limiting beliefs is not always easy. And that's why we're here for, right? I mean, having a coach or someone, even just a friend or someone you trust, can help you, because a lot of times we tell ourselves a lot of stories in our head, and it's really hard for us to break from that cycle. And we need someone external to help us see that and realize that it's just our own beliefs and thoughts, nothing more than that.
It's so true. Yeah, sometimes it's really frustrating. And it's not necessarily what's patterned in the world, right? We have a lot of external cues that are like, it's everybody else, it's what other people are doing. And okay, yes, there is a lot of bad behavior in the world, but how empowering is it to understand that there's so much within your control, right? That there's so much how you perceive a situation and how you take it in and what information is there for you, that you can change it and you can switch it just on your perspective and your energy.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, Dana, can you share maybe some examples or some success stories of how intuitive leadership has significantly impacted some of your clients or people you know or yourself?
Yeah, there are lots of stories.
Maybe something inspiring kind of to leave our listeners with today.
Yeah, I have a client. Well, I would say my biggest success story, or like what I get most excited about, is I have multiple clients who have been recognized in their annual reviews as intuition as an asset, as a skill set that they excel in. And so to me, that's really like, these are leaders in these industries that are able to step forward in times of chaos, right? When there is a tragedy or an unexpected situation, and navigate those situations with clarity and ease, and really being guided by what's important and like what their intuition and heart tells them, and be able to focus resources in areas that both have a logical part but also an intuitive component to it. But to be recognized by leadership as being an intuitive leader, that is something that they're good at and that they need to refine. To me, I'm like, okay, the world is changing.
Wow.
Like, this is the direction that we need to move in and that we need to go. So that's super exciting for me. But in my own kind of life and business, you know, I had really wanted to change my business structure from a brick and mortar business to an online business, probably for a year and a half before the pandemic hit. And my intuition, I had coaches tell me just shut your business down and do this other thing and just make the switch. And my intuition just kept telling me, just wait, just be patient, not yet, just wait. I
Mhm.
was like, oh my gosh, I'm waiting for so long. Really, I just have to keep waiting. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh, this is why I was waiting. And never in a million years, there was no, it was 100% my intuition. 100% that was like, wait, wait, wait. And
Incredible.
so, yeah. And overnight, my entire business went online. And so, you know, things like that make me really believe and understand that listening and really having it takes a lot of courage. Like, takes a lot of courage to be patient.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, the more you practice, the more you see the proof. And really you have to be aware and patient and and expect change, right?
That's
Expect it.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Dana, how can people reach out to you and contact you if they need your help?
Yes, I have a website, danashamas.com, with all my information on it. And I do private coaching. I have a group coaching program. And I'm really excited this fall in November. I'm leading a retreat in Costa Rica. And And so all of those are containers to work with this kind of practice and at different levels and in different ways. So the retreat is really exciting because you're in a different environment. You get to be inspired by nature. You get to really dive into different practices that connect you to your intuition. And then you have all these fun opportunities to utilize your intuition and how that process works. And when you get into how that process works and you believe it and you can experience it, then when you go back to your day to day life, it's really like a great transition to be like, oh, this is how I can use it day to day. This is how it, just like a muscle, you know, it's a skill set.
Sounds wonderful. And I'll definitely post your website on the show notes. Thank you so much, Dana, for being here. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really delightful.
Thank you for listening to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. This is your host, Limor Bergman Gross, and I want to encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Limor Bergman, and let me know, what do you think about the episodes? Feel free also to comment on Apple Podcasts and tell me, what do you want me to talk about? Which guests do you want me to bring? I really appreciate that, and have a wonderful day.